DVD-Formatier meldet sich zurück live aus dem Wiener Rathaus 2016 zur Game City. And 2016 for me is kind of like the year of Tom Clancy, because we have Tom Clancy's The Division out and Recon Wildlands is coming out soon. Next to me is Matthew Tomkinson. You are the senior game designer for Tom Clancy's Recon Wildlands. And I gotta say, when I think of Ubisoft, I think of few but very important names. I think of Far Cry, Assassin's Creed, Prince of Persia, and Tom Clancy. There are so many Tom Clancy games out. I mean, Wildlands is the 10th Ghost Recon game that's coming out. And what I always wanted to ask someone is, how do you incorporate ideas from Tom Clancy into your games? Is it more about, you know, the characters and the stories, or is it more about the tactical military components, what then usually makes it into the game?
Well, in Tom Clancy games, they always start with a what if. And for us, it's what if a Mexican drug cartel took over Bolivia and turned it into a narco state. And yourself, as Ghost, you go behind enemy lines, and your objective is to destabilize the whole cartel by taking over the way you want. You have total freedom. Every bosses that run this huge cartel that we call the Santa Blanca.
Okay, and that is the premise of the story, the things that we already know. And I know that you were, let's say, reluctant about telling us stuff about the story of the game. Can you tell us a little bit more about, you know, characters and what the player will actually be able to do to achieve that, you know, destabilizing the cartel?
Well, yeah, our objective was really to give as much freedom for the players as we could. Ghost Recon is a military tactical shooter at its core, and it requires freedom. And here, you can explore the world in any way you want and destabilize it exactly the way you want. So it means that you start with a central province, but you are not obliged to go there. You can go like very far away, and you can explore exactly what you want. Like there's mountains, there are lakes, there's even the salt lake that you can find in Bolivia, jungles, marshes, snowy places, and it's up to you to choose where you want to start. The whole cartel organization is in a mix of different aspects. You have obviously the production of drugs, but you also have the security where they defend everyone, and especially the production. You have the smuggling of the drugs, and for each character there is a story. You have to find them, you have to investigate, you have to turn every rock to find them, and then it's your choice how you proceed to find them.
So to me, that kind of doesn't sound like, you know, a typical shooter story. Kind of reminds me of a role-playing game with different quest lines that you follow. You have basically the quest line to do this with sub-quests and sub-missions to do. Because, you know, if you read a novel, it's a very linear experience. Yeah. One page follows the other. But if you are in an open world, you get the story told to you in a, let's say, puzzle kind of way. How do you keep the player interested for, you know, getting more details and stuff if it's non-linear, if there is basically no story arc that you predetermine the player to relive, but just pieces?
Well, I would say that lots of games consider themselves closer to movies with one linear story arc that you follow. On our side, it's more like a TV show with different episodes where each of them are connected but not in a given order. So it's really like you are looking at any episode in the order you want, and it works well. And the way the players are involved is that you've got lots of stuff to unlock in the game. So it's close to an RPG because you have lots of missions that you can do, but in terms of progression, it's more like plenty of options, plenty of skills that you can unlock, but it's not like you have enemies that level up and that with lots of hit points. Like most enemies here, you can eliminate, you can kill them just with one bullet in the head, and it will work. So it's not like there is like huge monsters or anything. It's more about the skills of the player.
Okay, so it's basically more like Rainbow Six Siege than The Division.
Yes, it can be.
Basically.
It can be closer, even closer to an Assassin's Creed game, I would say.
Okay.
Except that this one can be really played in co-op from the beginning to the end, and that brings another layer of freedom because it means that even if myself I choose to have a stealthy approach, in the meanwhile you could like do a diversion on another side, like stealing an helicopter and shooting at people, or having another player that jumps in with a parachute, which makes it like even more freedom than if it was only a solo experience.
Well, you know, I would go into Bolivia as kind of the Sylvester Stallone of Austria. I would just go in guns blazing and shoot everything in sight. How long do you think I'm gonna live?
Well, it depends. If it was in real Bolivia, I don't know. I don't really know your skills. I don't know how it could happen. But in Ghost Recon, if you don't really have, if you don't have a tactical approach, you wouldn't last very long because the enemy are very dangerous, and that's the name of the game. You have to spend time studying the different places and thinking wisely. What's the best way to go? Should I use my drone to check all the different defenses? Should I use my teammates to attack from one side and flank the enemies? Should I use a vehicle just to go in and like pretend like I'm part of the drug cartel? All of that is possible in Recon Wildlands.
So I guess that if I can kill other enemies with one bullet, they can also kill me with one bullet sometimes.
It's true, they are very effective. Like the menace can be super powerful, and you have to be very careful.
And the RPG elements that you mentioned, I guess, will be the skills that you mentioned. Different armor that might protect me from some amount of abuse. But what I read is that every weapon can be customizable in 100 different places, which allows up to 10,000 different variations of the same gun. My question would be, are you insane? I mean,
actually, on the previous Ghost Recon Future Soldier, it's a very different game, but one feature that the players love, what's what we call the gunsmith. And you can really look into details of all the parts of the weapon and customize them so that you really can have your weapon. And you can even change the colors of all of it, of even the color of every part. You can change the paints, so it's really up to you to choose your weapon of choice.
But the weapons will be customizable both in looks and maybe in damage dealing, silencers, and so on. But it will be playable without, you know, inscribing into some kind of a university and studying weapons, weapon crafting.
All the stats are displayed so that you really see the effect and you can really choose. But if you want to go with a simple weapon, it works very well. The weapons are not like with an RPG or The Division, for example, where they get much powerful. It's more really about tweaking, like they are more realistic in the end, and it's more about the feeling when you hold them and how you want to approach the situations.
And what you also said is, I'm going to damage this drug cartel. And I can start with the packaging, with the smuggling, and so on. So everything I do in this game, everything I accomplish, basically damages the cartel and influences the way they have to behave in the future. Because if I damage their smuggling, they cannot smuggle. If I damage their production, they might be able to smuggle, but they have nothing to smuggle. So how would you say that my actions have consequences in the game world, and especially how far do they carry? Are there interactions with NPCs, maybe side quests that I can take in different ways in order to make, let's say, a lasting impact on the game world?
There's one of the aspects that we didn't talk about that much, is that there are different factions in the game. So there is obviously the Santa Blanca cartel that is the main faction, that the main antagonist that you fight, and they're really represented with 4 operations. You even have like a CIA board where you see all the factions, and really, according to the people that you eliminate, you can reach the destabilize totally one operation. But there's also rebels that are people from Bolivia that you help, and then when you help them, they will help you in return, and they will even be more present in the world to help you. So you really see the impact you have on the world.
Can I become a drug lord myself?
No, you cannot in this game. It's a Tom Clancy game. There are some rules to follow up. Maybe someday in a DLC. No, I'm joking. No, it's not really the direction we're going with.
And I was going to think you were asking me about my personal skills again, you know, about the drug boss of Vienna. No, but you talked about Bolivia, which is a beautiful country, but also a very large country. How do you get, I mean, I've talked to a developer of Watch Dogs who had the honor to put one city into a game. You have a country.
We have a country.
How?
Well, the way we proceeded is that when we knew that we would have such a huge place, we wanted to go there first. So we spent 2 weeks there, like taking pictures, filming, really seeing all the geography. But not only, we also met people from there, like the people that really live there, and even the people that fight against the drug producers there, so that the game could be as true as possible. And we also met specialists for that. We even met a botanist specialist that really told us about all the different plants that they really grow in South America. And we have one person that is totally dedicated to just making sure that the game is really consistent with the real Bolivia. To see that everything that is placed in the world, there is nothing really stupid that is just meant for gameplay. No, everything has to be feel very real. That's our way to pay homage to Tom Clancy.
So you basically took the country and you scaled it down in order to have a let's say, comprehensible map for a player where it doesn't take like a day to walk through. But with a lot of different backdrops, different areas. You mentioned the forest, cities, the desert maybe. What else can we expect from the game world?
Well, there's elements that are really in Bolivia that we wanted to have, like the huge Salt Lake white thing that they have in Bolivia. It's something that you can find in Recon Wildlands, but there's also a huge and very long road that takes almost all the country there that you have in the game. And if you drive it, you can really look like for 10 minutes. But like you have fast cars in the game, for 10 minutes you can drive it. Okay. It's super long. And what I really love about it is because there's lots of variety in Bolivia and you can find it in the game. But one of the good aspects is that it's usually in games when you're at the top of a mountain and you see another one, you say, okay, that's the border of the world. And in the Recon Wildlands, you go there and you see another valley and you see other mountains. And you can go there. Yeah. And then you see another valley, another mountain. It's really, really huge. And you feel like you can go almost everywhere.
Do you have a fast travel system in the game?
Yes, we do. Since the game is really huge, obviously, once you unlock different places, you can fast travel there. But we also wanted just to make sure that driving through it was really enjoyable, just roaming around it. So you can ride motorcycles, of course, all land vehicles you could imagine. You also have boats, helicopters, planes, even, so plenty of ways to move through the world.
And as you definitely have seen by now, I'm a fan of boring questions. And the most boring question I really want to ask you, please don't fall asleep, is, but how big is the world actually? Do you have any scale in terms of square kilometers or something? How big it really is?
Well, how big I cannot tell you exactly, but I can tell you that it's the largest action-adventure open-world game that we have in Ubisoft.
And Ubisoft is not known for small game maps.
For sure. They are quite big, and this one is the biggest one.
And apart from all the missions and side quests that you can undertake in the game, what other things are there you can explore, you can see, you can collect, maybe?
Yes, there's lots of weapons that you can collect in the world. All the weapon parts that we're talking about are things that you can collect. You can help the rebels during side quests, and there are lots of them that we call side missions, actually. So, like, it's not only it's big, but it's packed with lots of activities. So it's a game that will take you a long time to really complete.
And you told us already that it's not going to be a single-player experience, but you need friends. You need someone for cooperative gameplay?
Actually, I wouldn't say that, because the game can be very enjoyable by yourself. It's it's not less enjoyable than any Assassin's Creed game, I would say, because we have AI teammates that really help you on Battlefield, but you can even improve their skills so that you really command them to do specific things. But it's true that if you like co-op games, this is the co-op game by essence. You can start really the game with it and jump in with anyone. Even if there's a different progression, sometimes when you're at an early level, it's hard to join people that are at a late level. Here, it's not less about the level, but it's more about your inner skills. So it really works well in this case.
You already told us we don't level up in the game. There is
You do level up, but it's not like you doing more damage while you level up.
Yeah.
You have specific skills that give you more options, like you can unlock more stamina, like to run faster, or you can be more stealthy in some conditions. You can improve your drone. There's lots of skills that you can do. I think there's around 45 of them, but it's not like you're leveling up like in an RPG game with people that have more hit points.
And there will also be a competitive PvP gameplay in the game. What can you tell us about that?
No, there's nothing announced about the PvP game. We really wanted to focus on a co-op experience that is really true to the Ghost Recon spirit, where you are 4 teammates against the enemy, and that's really what we want to focus on.
And there is one more thing I really have to ask you, because Ghost Recon Wildlands is not the first game you worked on. And prior to that game, you worked on, please say it yourself.
Just Dance.
You were one of the guys behind Just Dance. I mean, I love the Just Dance franchise. I gotta say that. But how did you make that turn? Because it's a total 180.
But it's true that we are lucky in Ubisoft. We have lots of games, and we have the opportunity to switch between different games. And what I really love about Just Dance is that it was a game really for everyone. But doing it, you have to make sure that you're super simple, super straight to the point, so that lots of people understand it. And my specific role on Ghost Recon Wildlands is to work especially on the menus, UIs, and making sure that the player learns the game very well. And knowing how to present the game to a wide audience is something that I try to take with me with Ghost Recon Wildlands to make sure that the game is super accessible to be a huge blockbuster as we want it to be. But you have to know that I started on Ghost Recon Advanced Warfare 2 10 years ago, actually. So it was more like a comeback to my first love with Ghost Recon Wildlands. And
you just managed to do something I never thought we were going to get, because you found something that Ghost Recon Wildlands and Just Dance have in common. You know, the presentation of the user interface. Yeah. And that is something that is very key to the players. And what I'm asking myself is, how are you going to present the tutorial? Because if we have an open world experience, I know that in a game where you can do basically everything from the first minutes, players can get kind of beaten up because there is so many possibilities, so much stuff to do. How are you going to introduce them into the world? So it's a very good question, because it's true that since we wanted to provide lots of freedom, we couldn't control the experience like other games do when they start with a linear experience of 1 hour. Here what we did is that we went with statistics, is that we're having a level design that really provide situations where you can learn the game if you stay close to the place where you start in the game. And we believe that players that will want to have an explained situation will just follow this. But if they want to go on by themselves and say, fuck it, it's good, I know how to do it, they can just leave. And we have systems where we know that the player is doing one action for the first time, and we can help him understand. Yeah. But it's true that if you want to go far away and do the most difficult part of the game first, you can do it, and maybe you will have less explanations, but after that, maybe that's what you're looking for also. So Matthew, I say thanks a lot for taking the time to talk to us. I wish you a great Game City and see you around. Thank you very much.